What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Nigel, and in this episode, we are going to be talking about Ancient Apocalypse Season 2. Okay, before we get into it, let's get one thing out of the way first. Keanu Reeves was in Ancient Apocalypse Season 2. And I know many of you, like me, were totally blown away that such an A-list actor was going to be in Graham Hancock's new show. However, to spoil the fun a bit, I will say this, that he appears for a total time of a few minutes at most throughout all 6 episodes. And you could tell that he probably filmed his scenes with Graham in probably under an hour. So I guess what I'm saying is don't watch this show if you are watching it because of Keanu Reeves, or you are expecting Graham Hancock and Keanu Reeves to go and explore some ancient ruins, because that does not happen in this show at all. Okay. If you have followed Graham Hancock for any meaningful amount of time, you will not learn anything from the show. It's basically Graham Hancock sharing his book, America Before, which is a book that I've read I've listened to the audio version of it. Graham Hancock is great at telling stories. He has that strong British accent, speaks very clearly, and makes whatever he's reading sound interesting. Okay, so let's move on to the episodes. Now, the episodes are essentially one long episode, but they've split it up into 6 episodes. Episodes 1 to 2 starts off with Graham having to explore the White Sands footprints, exploring new geoglyphs found in a part of the Amazon that people had no idea that humans were in there before. And there was quite a bit of time spent on Easter Island, where Graham was exploring the origins of the Moai statues. Now, an interesting thing to note is that throughout the series, Graham is interviewing archaeologists, and at times he is interviewing local archaeologists or local experts. And when he was on Easter Island, he interviewed a local expert there, and this man, he explained that these actual particular statues were built for the purpose of having the spirit of their ancestors enter into them and watch over them as soon as the eyes were placed in the eye sockets, I guess. So Graham then goes on about Easter Island, and he basically sounds at one point that he agrees with the local experts. Then he sounds like he maybe has a different idea. And the impression that I got was that he believed that these Moai statues were repurposed, and they were originally created by another lost civilization or influenced by another lost, advanced, ancient civilization. There is one cool thing that you will see is they basically show that Easter Island was not as isolated as it is now in the last ice age, which makes it easier to imagine why people could have settled there a really long time ago. Okay, moving on to episodes 3 and 4. Now, I'm going to butcher this. I do have a speech impediment, which I hide quite nicely with my video editing skills. But Graham then moves on to a city called Cusco in Peru, and the name of the site is Sacsayhuaman. I know I may have butchered that. Don't tease me, please. And he goes there and he basically explores their ancient ruins that they have there, and he highlights that there are differences on the lower level blocks which look like they have been melted to each other to fit into each other, and then he actually compares it to the blocks that are a bit higher up on the wall, and those blocks look like they were built using totally different techniques. So Graham does a good job here, and he basically highlights that, hey, this form of building is using techniques that we don't really understand right now. And he gets to the point where he's interviewing an archaeologist, and they are talking about this wall that's on the interior of this inner chamber. And the walls have gone through a process called vitrification. And the archaeologist says that you need really high amounts of heat to be able to do that. I think it is 1,400 degrees Celsius, if I'm not mistaken. But these ancient people, as far as we know, had no way of actually doing that. So how did they do it? I think Graham punched that point across quite strongly. Okay, so episodes 5 to 6 were, I think, the most entertaining of all the episodes so far. And I'm going to butcher this name again. So Graham goes to a site called Palo Bonito. And he goes there, and it's basically this huge site. It looks like a giant, kind of like a castle or something, but shaped a bit weirdly. It has about 800 rooms. It looks like it's really ancient, and it looks like it's built quite well. However, the actual particular dating that the archaeologist that Graham interviewed gave was fairly recent, about 900 years ago or so. Graham didn't really push back that much, and at one point he even said that he's not disputing that 900 years ago or that 1100 AD construction date. However, later on, Graham gets ambiguous again about quoting oral traditions and making it sound like this site was built at an earlier time, like way earlier. And you kind of get left with this confused kind of feeling like, hey, I don't really know when this site was built now. And then Graham does do this one thing which I think hurts his credibility. He goes to a site called Kasa Ring. I said that well, I think. And then he likens that site to Göbekli Tepe. And as evidence, he cites the T-shaped pillars that are at Göbekli Tepe to the T-shaped entranceways at Kasa Ring. And what was not a good look was these sites look nothing alike. They don't look anything alike. I think the average person would look at them and recognize that these are two completely unique sites. But Graham still wants to tie a link to them and then say, how did this link happen? I think that's what gives him a bit of a bad rap. However, that experience is short-lived, and then Graham moves on to the Mayan Civilization, where Graham investigates a site called the Temple of the Sun. Now, this episode was really interesting. I think this was episode 6, because Graham interviews an archaeologist who can read the Mayan script. And this archaeologist, he shows Graham how these ancient Mayans did maths. Now, and he then compared it to how we do maths. So our number system starts at 0 and ends at 9. And all other numbers are based off that. And what this archaeologist said was that with the Mayans, they started their numbers at 0 and ended at 20. And all their numbers had one of those in them. So it was really, really simple there. So it was really interesting to see that. The other point was they started talking about the Mayan calendars, and they highlighted the fact that there are three of these calendars, and the one that I found the most interesting was what's called the long count calendar. And this indicates to us that our age started at 3100 BC, so roughly 5100 years ago. And at this point of the episode, Graham interjects and says that time period is very interesting, of roughly 5,000 years ago, because Mohenjo-Daro was created at around that time, and so were the pyramids of Giza as well. And just to say, in conclusion, because I think that's pretty much it, or all the parts that I found interesting, is that oral tradition is something that Graham relies on quite a bit. And I don't really put that much stock in oral tradition, purely because you can't fact check it, you can't prove it. You can't bring a person back from the grave 500 years ago and ask him to recite what is it that he believes, and then compare that to what a person in our day is actually saying. You need manuscripts, you need text, you need stonework, you need something tangible like that. In conclusion, I will say that Graham makes a heavy effort on these particular characters like Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, Osiris, and at the Temple of the Sun, the god mentioned there is Kukulkan. All of these entities are the bringers of, let's say, knowledge, and they teach mankind how to do certain things, or they teach the people of that region how to do these kinds of things. Now, Graham uses these actual particular characters as evidence for this lost, advanced ancient civilization, saying that these entities may have been survivors of a great, like a cataclysm. And they go and they settle amongst the hunter-gatherers and teach them stuff, and then they do these great works. However, if the primary source for these individuals are oral tradition, I wouldn't put that much faith in them. But then what is my explanation for these ancient wonders? I would think that there is a potential in every ancient civilization for there to be a Elon Musk, a guy like Elon or a lady like Elon, who just comes in and they innovate. And I don't think you need a person from outside. Not to say that there was never a advanced ancient civilization out there that's lost to time. I'm with Graham completely on the fact that humans have been around for around 300,000 years, and for most of that time, modern archaeology wants us to believe that we were hunting and gathering, and that's pretty much it, until about 9 to 12,000 years ago. Now, I don't buy that. I think that we know hardly anything about our ancient past, and 300,000 years is a long time for people to figure out how to farm or how to build gigantic structures. I think that humans probably were really advanced in the ancient past. Whether they were as advanced as us or in the same way, I don't know. But I just think that we need to approach history with a sense of humility and curiosity. And that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, feel free to leave me a like and subscribe to the channel. All the best and take care.